Before we dive in, say hello to Puppy, Orange's resident lobster assistant and the most hard-shelled analyst on the team. Puppy has been tracking the humanoid robotics space with those sharp little claws for months now, and tonight he's especially excited, because this story sits right at the crossroads of capital markets, physical AI, and Taiwan's manufacturing future. Stay close, Puppy's got the receipts. According to a report published by DigiTimes on June 26, 2026, Agility Robotics, widely recognized as one of the pioneering companies in humanoid robotics and physical AI, has officially announced plans to pursue a public listing. The news immediately drew attention from global capital markets and the broader technology industry, positioning Agility's IPO as one of the more closely watched market events in the robotics sector this year. What makes this more than just another tech IPO story is the layer of strategic context sitting underneath the headline. DigiTimes specifically highlighted that behind Agility Robotics' IPO plans lies a notable Taiwanese supply chain presence, one that adds broader strategic significance to the company's public market debut. While the full details of that supply chain relationship are still emerging, the report draws attention to Foxconn as a key figure in this narrative. Foxconn's involvement is not framed as a passive investment but as something that speaks to the company's longer-term ambitions in the robotics space, suggesting that Taiwan's largest contract manufacturer has been quietly positioning itself ahead of what it sees as a structural shift in how physical work gets done. Foxconn's interest in Agility Robotics needs to be understood against the backdrop of what the company has been signaling internally for several years, that the era of pure human labor-dependent assembly is approaching a ceiling, and that humanoid robots represent the next logical layer of automation for large-scale manufacturing environments. An IPO by Agility Robotics does not just create a liquidity event, it creates a public market benchmark for valuing physical AI companies, which in turn validates the capital Foxconn has already committed and potentially accelerates the timeline for deploying these systems inside its own facilities. The public listing, in other words, is as much a signal to the industry as it is a financial transaction. Here is where the story connects directly to semiconductor infrastructure. Humanoid robots running physical AI workloads are not simple embedded systems. They require real-time inference at the edge, which means high performance, low-power chips, sophisticated sensor fusion, and increasingly, onboard AI accelerators. As companies like Agility Robotics scale from pilot deployments to factory floor volumes, the demand signal flowing back into the chip supply chain becomes material. Taiwan's semiconductor ecosystem, from chip design and advanced packaging to the logic and memory components that support edge AI inference, sits directly in the path of that demand curve, and Foxconn's deepening involvement only tightens that supply chain loop. The Taiwan angle here is not simply about Foxconn assembling robots. It runs deeper into the supply chain. Advanced packaging technologies, which Taiwan has developed into a global competitive advantage, become increasingly relevant as robot manufacturers look to integrate more compute density into smaller, thermally constrained form factors. The same capabilities that Taiwan's supply chain has built to serve AI server demand, co-packaged optics, chiplet integration, thermal management at the module level, translate directly into the requirements of next-generation robotics hardware. If Agility Robotics IPO accelerates industry investment in physical AI platforms, Taiwan's supply chain is structurally positioned to capture a meaningful share of that bill of materials. Here is the question worth sitting with tonight. When a company like Agility Robotics chooses to go public at this particular moment, is the IPO itself evidence that the humanoid robotics market is maturing, or is it evidence that early investors need an exit before the hard work of scaling actually begins? Public markets are good at pricing narratives and less good at pricing the operational complexity of deploying robots in real factory environments at volume. Foxconn's supply chain credibility is real, but the gap between a compelling IPO story and a robot that reliably performs dexterous tasks across 3 shifts without failure is still very wide. The semiconductor and supply chain opportunity is genuine, but the timeline risk is just as real. The second question is about control and dependency. As Foxconn deepens its involvement in humanoid robotics through relationships like the one with Agility Robotics, a structural tension emerges. Taiwan's supply chain excels at manufacturing and packaging, but the AI software stack, the training infrastructure, and the robot operating system layer are largely being built outside of Taiwan. If physical AI follows the same pattern as cloud AI, where hardware margins compress over time while software and platform layers capture disproportionate value, then Taiwan's supply chain may find itself in a familiar position, essential, high volume, and structurally squeezed. That is the risk that rarely makes it into the IPO prospectus. Tonight's story in one sentence: Agility Robotics IPO is not just a capital markets event, it is a stress test for whether Taiwan's supply chain can move from building the servers that train AI to building the bodies that deploy it. If you want to keep tracking where the semiconductor and physical AI infrastructure story goes next, subscribe to Orange 888 TW and follow Orange News. Puppy will be watching the filings so you don't have to.